Brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. In this video, we show you how to replace a front hub on this 2006 Chevy Malibu, same as any 04 to 08 Malibu, as well as the Pontiac G6. You know if you have a bad hub if you jack the front wheel off the ground and you can grab the top and bottom of the wheel and shake it and feel play, and then you can also grab each side, left and right, shake it and feel the same play. That kind of four-angled play is usually because of a bad hub. Tools you'll need are jack and jack stands, various sockets, 13 to 19 millimeters, plus a 35 millimeter socket with ratchets and extension. You'll need a breaker bar or a pipe for some extra leverage, flat blade screwdriver, large hammer, wire brush, and a torque wrench. Start out by using a 19 millimeter socket or wrench and loosen the plastic covers and then remove the wheel cover. Okay, you're going to remove the lug nuts, and if you don't have air tools, you'll want to have the wheel on the ground, loosen the lug nuts. Also at this point, you'll want to loosen that 35 millimeter hub nut. I do have the benefit of having an impact wrench, so I'm able to do that afterwards, but if you don't have an impact wrench, you want to use a breaker bar and a 35 millimeter socket and loosen that center hub nut now while the wheel is on the ground. Grab hold of the steering knuckle and turn it to make it easier to reach the back of the caliper.
First thing we're going to do is remove these two bolts here. These two bolts are 14 millimeter and they should come off pretty easy.
Okay, and I'm just going to speed it up as I remove those two bolts.
Okay. Now your disc should come off, but since there's some pretty decent ridges here, what you want to do is take a good sized screwdriver and kind of pry out with this hole, and that kind of loosens up the caliper, and then the caliper comes right off. Put it up there for now, and you can just kind of pry out your pads. Now we need to remove this caliper bracket, so we'll remove two 15 millimeter bolts here and here. Okay, these are going to be somewhat tighter, so I'm going to use my ratchet. If you have a breaker bar, that's the best thing, or you use a piece of pipe, put it on your ratchet, a little extra leverage, and they should come apart pretty easily. Same thing, top one. Just get it started.
And I'm just going to speed it up again here as I remove those bolts. I found that once I turned them probably 3 or 4 turns and they actually came out by hand.
Okay, the rotor pulls right off. Okay, right up here is your ABS harness. There's a little tab. Pull that down, disconnect that, then just use a screwdriver. Push these tabs down and pull the plug off. Okay, 35 millimeter bolt here for the hub.
And as I said earlier, if you don't have the benefit of impact tools or air tools, you'll want to loosen this hub nut while the wheel is still on and the vehicle's on the ground.
Okay, now your axle. You don't want to make it a habit to just beat on this mercilessly with a hammer, but what I do is I give it one good rap and I watch closely, and if that axle moves with one good hit, you know it's broken loose, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Okay, the axle moved, so I should be able to get it apart no problem. If the axle doesn't move with the rap of a hammer, then you'll need to use an axle puller which bolts onto your lugs and then use the bolt to push the axle through. Next we're going to remove the 3 bolts that hold the hub. Okay, one's up there, one there,
and then one around the back side, kind of hidden, tucked right in there.
Okay, for these bolts, especially the top one, you're going to want probably 3/8 drive tools because they're skinnier. They allow you to get in there. And And I've got a pretty good sized flexible handle. Let me try that. And I can use my pipe with a little more leverage. These should come apart pretty easily.
At this point, I'll speed it up. Use the pipe for the extra leverage, get the bolts loosened up, and then you can go at it with the ratchet and remove them the rest of the way. You'll want to turn your steering knuckle so that you can reach the third nut on the back side, and then just remove those bolts.
Okay, once you have the bolts out, good set of hammer.
I'm going to speed it up here. So you basically just hit it side to side, up and down, and you'll see the hub start to separate from the steering knuckle, and then eventually it comes loose and you can pull it right off.
Your hub off and your backing plate off. So I just kind of wire tied my brake caliper up there. Use a screwdriver and a wire brush, just kind of clean out some of the corrosion from the steering knuckle. Okay, just going to use a light coat of anti-seize, really just to help things go back together. You can use some penetrating oil or just regular oil. Take your backing plate and you just kind of put that in place. Your connector, you want to have that up towards the rear through the backing plate. Okay. Put your connector up and through. I have to push on the CV a little bit. Okay. Okay, so you want to make sure that your electrical connector is towards the rear. Okay. The hub onto the axle. Spin this around. It's in the correct position. Put one of your bolts through. Okay, push everything into place.
I'll speed it up here again. So you push the hub on, make sure it's in place correctly. Start the other two bolts. All the time you're doing this, just make sure that that ABS wire doesn't get pinched in there anywhere, and then kind of preliminarily tighten up those bolts.
Okay, make sure your wire is pulled through and is free. Okay, put the receptacle right up and click it into place, and I'll reconnect it. Okay, tighten these bolts to hold the hub to the steering knuckle to 65 foot-pounds.
Okay, and I'll just speed it up here, turn the steering knuckle, and tighten up the other two again to 65 foot-pounds.
New rotor from One Auto. Put it on. Take a lug nut. Kind of holds it into place here. Now take your bracket, and it goes basically between the knuckle and the disc. Put your bolt in. Let it find its way. bolts you want to tighten up to 85 foot-pounds. Okay, put this one in the front. Okay, you might want to make sure that your slides are pushed in here. Bring your caliper down right on top. Put your 2 bolts. Start them in. These 2 bolts you want to tighten to 35 foot-pounds.
Once you have the wheel back in place, then you put the lug nuts on by hand, and then I just use my impact wrench to just tighten them up preliminarily. Okay, now with the vehicle on the ground, torque the lug nuts to 100 pounds using a star pattern. Now torque your center hub nut, the 35mm nut, to 159 foot-pounds. Put your wheel cover back on. There is a hole for the valve stem. Then use a socket to tighten up the retainers. And last but certainly not least, before you drive your vehicle, make sure you pump the brakes a bunch of times, get the pedal to feel nice and firm. You have to reset those caliper pistons, then do stops from 5 and 10 miles an hour before you road test the vehicle. We hope this helps you out. Brought to you by www.oneauto.com, your source for quality replacement parts and the best service on the internet. Please feel free to call us toll-free 888-844-3393. We're the company that's here for you on the internet and in person.